Welcome to the HomeLord podcast. Today we have Devin Hubbard, who's an absolute legend in Utah. I'm going to read a quick intro about you, then we'll jump right into our questions. So Devin Hubbard is the owner-operator of both Hubbard Realty Group and DLH Investment Group. I didn't know you had that too. Very cool. He's also a partner at Fusion Capital Group with over a decade of real estate experience as an investor, developer, and agent. Devin is a family man first, married to his beautiful bride, Leslie, of over 17 years. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And together they have 6 amazing kiddos. Outside of real estate, Devin has a deep love and passion for sports and the outdoors. He also has a contagious obsession with networking, creating new friends, and helping others win in real estate, business, and life. Very well-rounded person.
I would say so.
And I follow you on Facebook, so I see a lot of your family life, which I think is very beautiful to watch.
Well, thanks. That's definitely a big part of it. So, the real estate is what helps build the family part, and the family part helps fuel the real estate stuff. So it's a good mesh. It's a good blend.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let's dive into the questions.
Yeah, so one of the things that we love to ask people when they hop on is we just want to learn more about you and your story. So what got you started in house hacking? Like, why house hacking?
Yeah. So it kind of just fell upon it for my wife and I. The first house we ever bought, we were married just like a year, and we would always go to my in-laws' house for Sunday dinner. We'd always go a certain way, and this house fell in our lap, so we ended up going a different route to drive to my in-laws' house, and in going that different route, 2 doors down from my in-laws' house, 2 doors down from my in-laws' house ended up being this for sale by owner sign. We're like, let's just check it out. So we called the number. We ended up working this deal out where grandma just passed away. The kids inherited the house. They want nothing to do with it. And at the time we thought, oh my gosh, can we even afford a $185,000 house? It's like 3,000 square feet on 3rd acre with a creek in the back. And I was like, I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. But this house happened to have a basement apartment. And we ended up buying this house, and our mortgage ended up being like between $1,100 and $1,200 a month. And we ended up renting out that basement for like $850 a month. That was a game changer. Like when we were young and poor and having kids, that's literally what helped keep my wife home for, to be home with the kiddos, was getting the majority of our mortgage payment paid by having renters in the basement.
Wow.
So that was like almost like on accident, but it also opened my eyes. That was like one of the biggest things that helped open my eyes to the power and leverage of real estate before I even got started in real estate myself.
That's awesome.
So,
what year was this?
Well, your intro, I've been married 17 years, so that was probably like between 15, 16 years ago.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, before we ever had kiddos.
So like 2010?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Math is mathin'.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got married March of 2008, so yeah, probably like end of 2009 or beginning of 2010 range.
Awesome.
So
what surprised you the most about house hacking for the first time?
It wasn't that hard. Like, like it was like we live upstairs and we've got our family or our space, and again, not every property is as easy or convenient as others, but like there's just plenty of room and we're easy to get along with, and we just found people that I think we literally just threw something on Facebook or KSL at the time, and it wasn't hard to find somebody that wanted to pay $750, $850 a month in rent at that time. So it was easy.
Gosh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Because a lot of times when we talk to people, when they say, oh, we're going to house hack, their family's normally like, what the heck? Why would you want to do that to your house? So like, what was the reaction from your friends and family when you bought this house and you started house hacking
it? Sorry, my voice is giving out.
That's what the drink's for, right?
Yeah. I don't know if we really got much negative feedback. That was kind of a not necessarily super common thing, but that was already happening like in that neighborhood. So you like, so there, and I think the grandma that passed away that we bought her house, I think her grandson was living in the house before. So just like having that knowledge of, oh, like it's already set up for that. And if we can offset our income, like it just seemed
Then
like
why
a
not?
no-brainer. Yeah. So as an agent now, I tell them, like, anytime I talk to a first-time home buyer or any person and just say, hey, if you're even remotely open to this, I realize not everyone is, but if you're open to this idea, like, it's crazy not to consider it.
Yeah.
So,
And you said your mortgage was around $1,200?
yeah, it was between 11 and 1,200 at the time, and we were getting like 750 to 850.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
it was
Almost
literally
two-thirds.
cheaper to own that than it was to go pay rent to live anywhere else.
Okay. And how long did you hold on to that house hack for?
We were there, I believe, 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then did you keep it or did you sell it after you left?
Unfortunately, I sold it. I didn't like that. Here's another question, then maybe I'm getting into it early, but one of my biggest regrets over the last 10 years of real estate is not holding on to more properties. It's always nice to have the money in your pocket, but it's like my net worth would be substantially more had I just kept on to like even a small fraction of the homes that I've owned or flipped.
This
over
is
the
a
years.
side tangent, but I still remember you posted on Facebook one time. It was like this red house that you're like, you
Oh,
sold
yeah.
it for like 150,000. And then you're like, if I just would have kept onto it, it was after the whole COVID boom, like it would have been worth like 400,000.
Yep.
Just crazy to think
Yeah.
that was an outcome that could have happened.
Yeah.
So just buy a lot of houses and hope another pandemic happens.
Yeah. 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 Perfect example. The last house we bought, we paid $432 for it, and I thought we were insane. We lived there for 4 years, and we sold it for $875. We sold it for more than double 4 years later.
You know, it brings up a really good point, though, because most of the time when I talk to people, they're like, housing is the most expensive it's ever been. But that is like almost always the case. The
Yeah.
only time it wasn't was the freaking 2008 crash when you were so lucky to buy it. But
Yeah.
in this realm, though, the thing that I keep telling people is every time they talk to their parents or their siblings or whoever else has bought a house, they're like, oh, when we bought our house, we thought we were stupid. Like it was so expensive. We thought we were crazy. But it just goes to show that you're always going to feel that way, but it's always in hindsight that you see, oh my gosh, I wish I would have bought like a dozen
Oh, yeah.
homes at that price.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's a really cool statement. So
So going back, what's one thing that you wish you would have known earlier?
How good we had it with the low rates. Again, buy as many properties as you can and hold on to them for 3%.
Yeah. That's where rates were, I'm guessing, around 2010. In the threes.
I would say we were still like 5-ish.
I was going to say, I thought by some of the charts that I've seen, you were like between 5 and 7 around that time still.
Yeah. So the first condo I ever bought after my mission, I was like 22 years old and I paid $68,000 for it. And
Gosh, that just
I
seems
think
wild
it was
to me.
like, I think it was my first mortgage was like somewhere in the 5s, and then my second mortgage, I had a small second mortgage on it, but I think my second mortgage was like 6.8.
There we are.
But that was probably 2004 ish. No, sorry, 2006.
Or it's 2 decades ago. That's a long time.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is that's you buying peak market, and in hindsight, again, 68,000. I'm like, that feels wrong.
Yeah. It's like
Like,
some guys are probably listening to this like, I wish I paid that less, that much for my truck. Like I paid more, for my
Right.
truck than I paid
right.
Yeah, for that. Yeah, those same condos are probably selling for like low to mid 300s right now.
Totally believe
So,
it too.
Yeah.
It's just wild. So, what is coming from your experience? Because house hacking, from your perspective, wasn't necessarily too difficult. It was actually a lot easier than you thought. What was one of or were there any surprises that you have had as a first-time landlord in a house hack?
I do remember one case where we were in between renters, so we put something on KSL, and we had somebody. Again, I'm a pretty trusting guy,
Right. I feel like most of us are.
And
That's usually the first thing said before something really bad happens.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here's the tea. I'm teeing it up really well, right? And we had, I think, and I'm trying to remember the details of the story, but I think it was a single mom, and she had this sob story, and I was just trying to be the nice guy, and all of a sudden she hadn't moved in, but then this old boyfriend moved in, and he was sleeping on the floor. And anyway, we were able to cut it off pretty quickly, but it turned into one of those scenarios where, like, I tell people, like, house hacking is the best way to get into real estate, bar none. But you also have to be extra cautious because whoever you're renting to is also attached to your, basically part of your home. Mm-hmm. So if you can figure out the best ways to filter or, make sure that whoever's renting from you is solid, then yeah, because I learned that way.
Your bad apple prevention.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a difficult one too. And this is something we can talk about later, but like fair housing laws and not discriminating. But like in my experience of managing rentals, whenever you have a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, man, those relationships don't always last very long, and it can really ruin it for you if you're renting to one or both.
Yeah,
of them.
and you can get drug into a lot of the drama and stuff that happens that you don't want the police showing up ever. But yeah, when it's someone you're renting to, you're like, oh, here we go.
You're like, I just became that neighbor in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm gonna be baking a lot of cookies this Sunday to apologize to all the neighbors.
The cop lights at 11 p.m. That was me. My bad.
Yeah.
Tenants are gone now.
Yep.
Okay. So if someone were to come to you today and say, hey, I want a house hack, what would be your number one tip for them?
Just to make sure that they're comfortable with it. Like, okay, here's what you're signing up for. Like, here's the pros, and I guess any, some of the cons that we've discovered or discussed. But I would just say, make sure that they're eyes wide open going into it, so that you're not the one looking like the bad guy if they get into a scenario that doesn't fit what they're hoping for or expecting. So,
and that's fair to say. I think some people assume that it's really easy or it's really hard, but something as simple as you are sharing walls with someone, or you do have to take on the landlord role, and that can be intimidating. But for your case, you were able to figure out, even if you had to call the cops or go through some crazy drama.
Thankfully there was no cops involved.
Okay,
but it was just one of those things where I think the way you approach and word things and handle things is definitely a big deal. So
one of the biggest things that I've seen is the old adage of where like an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. 100% accurate when it comes to picking renters for your house, because it's a lot easy to just say something right up front and set the expectation, but it's really hard once that expectation has either not been met or wasn't done well to have to go back and redo it again, which is why we have the whole HomeLord process in the system, is to help know what points are important to hit on, because a lot of people just don't know. And it avoids so many awkward conversations if you just know what you're doing right from the get-go.
Yeah. I've also learned from experience too that some of the best and some of the worst renters are your own family, right? Like,
yes.
So when the church shows up with your check rent to pay for your family to live there, you're like, oh,
shoot.
Yeah, I kind of feel guilty, but you're like, it's, we all signed the contract, but that was not expected.
Yep. Yeah.
We're asked often with our home buyers who get house hacks, should I rent for family because they have someone that's interested? And we typically recommend that you don't, unless it's absolutely necessary, because it opens the door to so many more problems. Kind of like the sob story, right? Mm-hmm. It's so hard to enforce a lease agreement when it's a family member.
Yeah. But I'm your cousin.
We share the last name. Yeah, for sure.
Blood is better, that whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but financially, it can be really rough. So I'm curious, after that first house hack, that was like a huge launch pad for you guys. Did you house hack again after that, or did you kind of move on because you probably had some kids at some point? Okay, so you did hack again after that.
So the second house we moved into, we weren't there long enough to really do it. It was an unfinished basement. We ended up buying it creatively and sold it creatively. I think we bought it for $300, sold it 10 months later for like $380, $385. And that kind of helped us get into our last home that I mentioned. So we paid $432 for it. I think our mortgage payment, which again, I thought we were crazy paying like $2,000 a month for a mortgage. But I think, again, we ended up getting like $1,000 a month for the basement and that too. So it had,
That's awesome.
yeah. And eventually that's where kind of our road with house hacking ended. Just, when you've got 5-6 kids, you got to,
I'll say, if you feel comfortable sharing, how many kids did you have in your first house hack and the second house hack? Because some people, that comes up often of like, at what point should I not house hack because I want more space, I'm having more kids?
So our first one, we had 3 kids. There was the most we ever had. And then at our last home, we had 5. So, and that's, once we had our 5th, we adopted one. And then right when we adopted him, my wife found out she was pregnant. So they're only like 14 months apart. So it was kind of at that point we're like, okay, it's probably time to shut off the basement, shut off the basement to renters. And so I ended up turning one of the rooms in the basement to my home office, and then my daughter had the other room. So, but it's amazing to have, once you have that space that you're not used to occupying, you're like, oh,
makes your house feel
kitchen.
massive.
Yeah, a second kitchen that now turns into like my home gym, and so it's nice. But yeah, the income's probably a little bit better, for sure.
But that's still a cool evolution of house hacking where it's a financial blessing, but when you need it, you can use it for your own space.
Yeah,
And
totally.
a lot of people don't think about it that way.
Because even when you had all those kids, if push really came to shove, and if you were about to like foreclose on a house, you guys hit hardships, you just revert back to what you used to do, rent out the basement.
Yeah.
And your biggest expense is now cut in half again.
Break out the bunk beds.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bunk beds.
But like, it's such a good fail safe. Like, because house hacking isn't necessarily meant to be a forever thing. It's meant to be a really strong springboard to get the portfolio started.
Yeah.
But once you get there, you can always still rely on it as good old trusty.
Yeah.
If you really need it.
If that's your worst case scenario, right? Like, it's not that bad.
You're already comfortable with your worst case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
So throughout all the real estate you've done, it sounds like you're pretty positive about the whole house hacking strategy. In 2025, from your experience so far, or even 2024, what have you seen works and doesn't work for house hacking in this market?
That's a really good question. What I see works, again, I think just having it set up where there's actually not that needs to be less interaction, but if you can keep those entrances separate, that's like probably number one, right? I would say that's probably number one, but yeah, I guess is the best case scenario is just making sure that your entrance and their entrance are as not far apart, but just as separate as possible.
Yeah.
To make that flow in and out like less awkward or less inconvenient as possible. But yeah, I guess which puts me, what doesn't work is, if you've got to share the same entrance or something too, like that's just makes it a little bit harder.
If you look on the MLS, I was doing this last night.
Okay.
There are townhomes with illegal house hacks that I just want to tour them to see how they built the entrance, but somewhere in the garage, they dug like a pit, separate entrance. So they both share the garage space.
Okay.
And their entrance is there, and then they go through the other door. It's the craziest thing.
That is interesting.
I would feel uncomfortable with that.
Oh, 100%.
I've actually seen that quite a bit.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know
like
if
I've seen some townhomes where they do a walkout like around the back, and they have to like have their renters walk behind and like down the row of houses to get to the
for like the
backyard
in
kind of
units
thing.
when they can pull that off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah,
That's
ideally,
crazy.
most house hacks, it's like all the way on the side of the house or all the way around the back. And it kind of surprises people that if you do it right, you actually rarely see your tenants. Like,
True.
at least the traditional house hack with the basement rental.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah,
I think I've seen my renter like once this week. Like half the time I'm like, I wonder if he's alive. And then I like kind of peek out there. I'm like, his cars have moved.
Yeah.
Like, it must be. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, any other crazy things you want to bring up? We have a few minutes left.
yeah. So there was one thing that you had mentioned earlier that I'm trying to rack my brain about and think, because I'm like, oh, that is such a good point. I'm trying to rack my brain and think about it, but it's not coming to me. So one of the things that I would love to ask is, one of the bigger things that we come across in our like getting people on board with this idea is they feel like it's like the biggest sacrifice that we could ever ask them to make. In some cases, they're like, what do you mean rent out part of my house? Like, how dare you, kind of an attitude. In your experience, do you see house hacking as like this great and incredible sacrifice? Or is it, I don't know, how would you describe house hacking as far as that would be concerned?
That's a good question. I would say for me, I've labeled myself as an investor for quite a while. So I think maybe that just, that's me putting my investor hat on, just saying, hey, this is me like helping cover my liability. This is me, in a sense, sacrificing a little bit. But it's like, well, if you were to go buy a duplex or a single family home that just has a legal ADU, like, what's the difference?
Right.
And so I think if you can tee it up the right way, and again, I don't know from your experience, but I think it's mostly women that might have that insecurity or concern, maybe more than men. Most men, at least from my experience that I've talked to, don't seem to have a big deal with it. And maybe that's just more of a security or a concern with women. But I think, so if you can find a way to address those concerns and just say, hey, maybe it's a sacrifice, maybe it's an investment, or, whatever it is that speaks to them to help them overcome whatever those, whether it's emotional or just fear because they've never done it before. But I think when we can talk to them and say, I'm doing this, or I've done this myself, this is how I got started, whatever, then I think that alleviates a lot, because it's coming from a place like, hey, I've done this before, instead of here's how you do it, and with zero experience.
Right. It's kind of like the agents that are like, oh, well, you should definitely buy a house. I'm like, do you have a house? They're like, no. It's like one of those
living
things.
in my mom's basement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I have that same conversation with people, and I think, and it all comes down to the individual, but I feel, and I don't know how to correctly identify what the thought is in my head, but basically, when you're just starting off in life, people, I feel like they want to jumpstart 40 years in the future.
Totally.
Like, they want the white picket fence. They want this beautiful house on acreage in like the fancy, nice suburb that they love. Mm-hmm. And I feel like most of my conversation is like, guys, no offense, but why would you deserve that? And it's not that they don't actually deserve it or anything like that. It's just like, what work and what sacrifice has been made for that to happen? And I try to help people see that if they want that, that is a very realistic dream that you could work towards. And it's not actually unattainable, like most people are claiming that it is.
Yeah.
It's just every kind of dream has a sacrifice that you have to make attached to it. And I think most of the sacrifices are actually pretty heavy, like whether it's like starting a business or doing all these things, like it could be a huge sacrifice. But of all of the sacrifices that could happen, I feel like house hacking is just such an easy one.
I agree.
Like, I feel like it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And again, I think for my wife and I, it was before we even had kids. So it was a quick, easy decision. Again, I maybe this is a good question for you guys. What would you say is the average age for first-time home buyers right now? Are they usually probably mid to late 20s with kids?
I love this question. Love it.
I think we all know the average age, like that people keep talking about, is like 37, 38. A lot of our clients are usually second-time home buyers in the late 20s, early 30s, either with a kid on the way, or very much planning on having a kid in the next year. So that's what we've seen.
But I've had very, very, very young 20-year-olds very young, buy their first house, and it's a house hack. And I'm like, you guys get it.
Yeah.
Like by the time you're 30, you're gonna have like 3 of these stacked up,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna get that fence dream that everybody wants. You
You
know?
have no idea how grateful you are that you made this decision at this age, right? Like,
Yes,
you don't
'cause-
see it now, but in a decade, you'll be like,
Because how much
oh my
harder
gosh.
would it have been for you if you started house hacking at 4 kids?
Oh, yeah.
Like it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
no
probably
thanks
wouldn't
at
have
that
happened. If I'm being honest.
Right,
It
right.
likely probably wouldn't have happened, but
Yeah, we had 2 closings the past month. One with a 22-year-old married, and then another one 24 years old and married, duplex, and then one I caught. Was that a duplex or a basement?
Duplex.
Duplex. Yeah, so
Legal
2 duplexes, legal duplexes. Just like you started at like 22 as well, so like. Yeah, look at how much your life has changed because of that.
yeah. And the funny thing is, I even rented when I bought that condo. I immediately found a buddy to rent out
You're renting your
the
rooms
second
out?
bedroom.
I
Imagine-
love that.
Born to house hack.
I love
Yeah,
that.
because I was like, I don't know if I want to just live here alone.
Yeah.
I might as well find a buddy that wants to tag team with me. So
Devin
Yeah.
has always been a hustler. That's
Dude,
fun.
for sure.
Okay, well,
like not, I guess by accident more than anything, but yeah,
Well,
thankfully it worked out.
it's still meant to be. Okay, well, we're at time. Any last words of wisdom that you can share with those that are listening?
Just always be open-minded. Like, again, sometimes we fear or we're scared of what we haven't done before, the unknown, or something we haven't tried before, and sometimes it's just pushing through that and figuring ways out and just looking at things as an opportunity versus a reason not to do something.
Yeah, love it.
So-
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good
Thanks,
talking
guys.
to you, man.
Appreciate it.